We want to see your smiling face, Don.
I'm afraid to move.
You're not still working, are you?
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, let's, there you go. Hey, Don. Now we're at full strength. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Design Review Board on Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. This meeting is called to order. I'd like to request staff to call the roll for members who are present and who are not. Leslie?
Yes. Board Member Blaney.
Present.
Board Member Kent.
Here.
Board Member Kowalski.
Here.
Board Member Summers is absent today. Vice Chair Reggie.
Here.
And Chair Paul.
Present.
Excellent.
Good. Well, next we'll move the meeting procedures. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I'd like to ask staff to address how public comment will work this evening. Leslie?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. In addition to accepting written comments up to the that are sent to the DRB, staff is accepting public comments tonight over the telephone. If you are in person and when it is time for public comment, just hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see the raise your hand icon. If you are phoning in, you dial *9. You can use the following phone number, which is 669-900-9128 to join the meeting. The meeting ID is 835-3174-3214 #, and this can be found on the meeting agenda. I realize I'm reading this now to people who are already in the meetings. I'm not sure if you're not in the meeting how you'd get that information. That's okay. So again, I will repeat the information and the how to participate each time the public comment period is open. And again, if you submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the Design Review Board. So thank you.
That's it?
Yes.
Okay, let me now describe the meeting procedures. We'll begin with a staff report for each item with a limit of 5 minutes, followed by the applicant's presentation, which will be limited to 10 minutes. Members of the public will then be invited to speak, and community members on the conference call can speak when they receive the notification that they have been unmuted, and their comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff or the public after each segment, and then we will close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the board for discussion. Hopefully everybody understands that. If there is anyone with an urgent communication on a topic that is not on the agenda, they may address the board at this time. And please know that anything raised has not been noticed or agendized, so there will be no discussion on these items, but we will hear you out. You see anyone?
Yes. So again, yeah. So again, this is for items that are not on the agenda. If you have something to raise, please use the raise a hand icon at the bottom of your screen. If you're phoning in, please press *9. And no one wishes to speak on this.
Oh, okay. So then we will go on to the consent calendar, which has one item, the minutes from the December 7th, 2021 Design Review Board meeting. And that is the approval of the Design Review Board minutes. Are there any comments from the public on this item for the consent calendar? Or the board members for that matter?
So again, if you are in attendance and you speak or have something to say about the minutes, please dial *9 if you're phoning in, or use the raise the hand icon. No one wishes to speak on the minutes.
Okay, any corrections from the board members about the minutes? No, seeing none. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
Board Member Kent moves to approve the minutes as submitted.
And a second?
Board Member Kowalski approves, second.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Leslie, would you take a roll call for the vote?
Yes, Board Member Blaney,
Abstain.
Board Member Kent,
Aye.
Board Member Kowalski,
Aye.
Vice Chair Reggie. You were sort of muted. Was I the only one who didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that either.
Okay.
Aye. Did you hear it that time?
Yeah,
Yes, yes. I lip read, but I'm not sure if someone just listening would be able to see that, hear that. And Chair Paul.
Aye. So that item is approved. Okay, so that will move on to the first action item on the agenda tonight, which is agenda item number 2. 33 and 41 Ross Street Terrace. It's a request for a lot line adjustment, an exception in environmental and design review permits to allow for construction of 2 single-family residences on vacant hillside lots and a 2-lane access driveway within the undeveloped Ross Street Terrace right-of-way. Dave Hogan is the project planner. So Dave, can you give us a staff report?
Yes, Chairman. Let me share my screen, if it will allow me to. Oh, boy. Okay. So this is the Ross Street Terrace residential project, and I've promised the planning manager that I will get through this quickly. So we'll have a chance to go back a little more timely afterwards.
Please.
So there are 4 applications: a lot line adjustment, a permit to build a house on the upper lot and lower lot, and an exception to approve exceptions for minimum natural open space and driveway slope. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is, this was considered before back in June. And so the applicant has made changes. So we're looking for a review of the design changes made by the applicant. And we would really like the board to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission on this project so that it can go forward. Now, the previous comments by the DRB expressed a concern with the height and design of the retaining walls, the size of the proposed residence, the need for more guest parking. They originally proposed only 1 space per unit, to reduce the amount of impervious area, basically to provide more pervious area, and additional landscaping between some of the dual set of retaining walls. So here we are. I hope you can see my cursor.
Yep.
Okay. You have 2nd Street and 4th Street up here. This is on the hill south of that. Here's Ross Terrace. The project involves the extension of a driveway up to the 2 residences. The main significant change in the project is a modification to the access drive in this area. It pushes it a little closer to the southern property line in an attempt to reduce this height of the retaining walls. The overall layout with a house here and a house here has in effect remained the same. I wanted to show a little bit the area around the homes. What you can see here is a major change in the amount of pervious area as they provided a secondary parking space. So these are the main changes around the homes. The landscape plan is similar to what it was before. The biggest change is down here in the lower right corner, where they provided more detail into the species to provide more diversity and be more appropriate for what the landscaping in the area. And you can see here the other homes that are in close proximity to the project. The materials and elevations are mostly the same, except for in the lower left corner where they're proposing, rather than concrete pour in place. They're proposing a Versalock system where it'll appear to be a little more compatible, with a higher quality of design. And this is the retaining walls along both sides of the driveway. Here's the original proposal for the lot line adjustment. The current lot line adjustment proposes to modify the location, and that's the big difference. And what this does is put all of the driveway and backup areas on each lot, eliminating some of the need for extra easements. So I want to kind of summarize the DRB's previous concerns and how the applicant has addressed them. And then we'll go through all of that, providing specific information. So there was a concern with retaining wall height and design. Well, they've done some things to reduce the height and they've changed the materials. There was a concern about the size of the residences. In response, the architect has revised both site plans to shrink the two units a little bit. They're still both 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but both floor plans are several hundred square feet smaller. The original proposal had only one guest parking space per unit. They've revised the project, which relates to the lot line adjustment, to add a second space. So each unit, in addition to the 2 spaces within the garage, now has a second space in front of each unit. The DRB expressed a concern with the amount of impervious area, and they've added additional impervious pavement around the parking areas. And then there was a request that additional landscaping be provided between the retaining walls. And that they've provided additional landscape details in those areas. And now I'd like to go through and kind of highlight each of these issues. So the retaining wall issue, what you see at the top is what was on the previous project proposal that went to the design review board. The current plan is down below. And so what they've done is they've curved the access drive down to try to avoid some of the steep retaining walls. You still have fairly sizable, but they have been reduced in size. And the blue lines on the bottom are retaining walls that are generally above 3 feet in height. Within the city code, retaining walls up to 3 feet in height are just kind of accepted as reasonable. Above 3 feet in height, they're looking at an additional review, and that's part of this project. So you can see there has been some reduction here on the lower walls in this area, and most noticeably here at the access drive with Ross Terrace. The new materials the applicant's proposing is a Versalock block system. Earlier images of the project showed a more substantial railing system that was quite substantial. The new system is more of a wire cable, which will be much less visually noticeable than what was originally on some of the other documents. And at the bottom here, we're showing an example of what retaining walls with this material might actually look like. Okay, some details. What this table shows is the previous plan set and the current plan set. And I've highlighted with a red circle the changes. As you can see, there's, between 180 and 200 square foot reduction in the size of each house. The resident parking, which is in effect garage, is the same. And they've added a second guest parking space for each unit. The project still requires the approval of an exception for minimum natural open space. And as you can see, they're still in the 50 to 55% range, given the constraints of the site. What this shows is a comparison of the impervious surfaces. On the left side of the screen, you see the previous plan. And to compare, the brown lines on the right side are the size of the original pervious surface. The blue lines represent the proposed pervious areas. So what you can see is the applicant has made an effort to provide additional pervious area outside of the right-of-way of Ross Street Terrace. The previous plan didn't have a lot of detail down here on the landscape plan between the two retaining walls. The revised plan shows that their landscape architect has gone in and provided additional detailing in this area. And there are some other landscape changes, but a lot of those relate to other site changes. The board at the time was more concerned with this area. And at this point, that concludes my very brief presentation. And if the board has any questions for me, I would be happy to entertain them. I know the applicant team has some additional comments they would like to make. And at this point, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Dave.
Dave, I'm sorry, Dave, can you just mention the public comment we've received?
Oh, thank you. The board has, there was a number of public comments provided with the original materials that were provided. There was a follow-up presentation of additional comments that hadn't been provided originally, as well as comments provided on the initial study that was prepared and circulated. When the project goes forward to public hearing with the commission and council, these comments will be considered by the planning commission and city council in their deliberations. Overall, excuse me, the public comments have been very consistent on this project. And if the council, if the board have any concerns with the additional comments that you've received as a desk item, staff would be willing to entertain that or discuss that with you. And I believe at this point now I'm available to answer any project questions the board may have.
Thank you, Dave. Does the board have any questions of Dave?
I have one.
Go ahead,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Dave, has the fire department signed off on Ross Terrace?
Yes, sir. Both Public Works and Fire Department got to put their heads together, and they have both stated that the design of the access drive is sufficient to meet their needs.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had
Dave?
one.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
You talked about the needing an exception to meet the required open space provision, and that the projects are currently at 51 and 55%. What is the required percentage?
The 51% is what would be required if the lot was full size. Let me get you the exact information.
I'm just trying to understand the requirement and then what's being provided so we can see the difference between the two.
In effect, let me.
Percent of required.
Percent of required. A lot of that relates to the size of both lots. Both lots are considered to be legally non-conforming. That is, they were legally created but no longer comply with the requirements of the zoning district. Can the board members see what's on the screen now with the lot data?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
So am I correct in assuming that 50% of what they're required is what they're providing?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if you look on pages 4 and 5 of the staff report, there are charts that show for the upper lot, the requirement is 3,769 square feet, and they are proposing 1,902 square feet. And on the lower lot, the requirement is 65.3 square feet. I mean, it's 3,126 square feet, and they are proposing 1,733 square feet. So again, that's on page 4 and 5 of the staff report.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Any other questions? I had a question about the Versalock retaining walls along Ross Street Terrace.
Yes, sir.
The images that were shown is like a tan block. Is that still being proposed?
Yes, sir. That's what the applicant is proposing.
And the color board, I guess, that they had in the plans had, were proposing a combination of materials, including, I think, yeah, right there. We got the horizontal siding is like a dark gray, almost like a blue gray. The vertical siding is a natural color with a clear stain.
Mhm.
But the panel siding is a hardy panel system that is Revere pewter. Is that an accurate? That's relative. It's like an off-white. Is that correct?
Yes, you know, with color material boards digitally, they're often a little off, but the overall color and design intent is correct. And the architect is online and you will be able to question him specifically. This exhibit has been revised to reflect the new retaining wall system. The original one was a cast in place concrete, which would of course be gray.
There is still some cast in place concrete, not on the retaining walls for the Ross Street Terrace, but on the driveways. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay, and that cast in place concrete would just be natural color.
Yes, it's going to be the natural concrete color.
Right. And the other question is the panel siding being that Revere pewter color. I know that at one point the Hillside Design Guidelines encouraged or mandated darker, more natural colors. Is that still in play or not?
The design guidelines haven't changed as far as I'm concerned. In this location, the architect for the applicant has proposed these colors. And if you'd like to question him later or provide alternative requests, he would be the correct person to ask.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, now let's hear from the applicant. Is the applicant can limit their presentation to about 10 minutes, because I think we've seen this project before, and Dave has given us a good summary, executive summary. So can the applicant add to that, please?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Thank you to the board, and thank you to Dave for his presentation. We appreciate you hearing the continuation of our project. I'll only take a few minutes since Dave has already gone over in good detail what the revisions that we have made from our previous meeting back in June. I just wanted to say a couple things. One is, in discussing our project, it's hard to talk about the architecture without also including discussion about the access road from Ross Street Terrace. A few additional concerns that came up at the meeting last time that we didn't cover that were the board had requested that we add a pedestrian access, a way for the public to get from Ross Street Terrace down to the existing gravel roadway where Clayton Street ends. So to that end, we've added a wood staircase at the end where we would be doing some natural grading to get from our existing grade of 268 down to 260, which is where the existing gravel roadway is. We also did quite a bit of work with our civil engineer to reduce the retaining walls, as Dave discussed. In addition to that, we added some additional bioretention areas to help with runoff, and we did our best to minimize off-hauling by balancing the cut and fill as we went through that process. In general, I think we've done our best to mitigate as many of the issues facing this very complicated site as we can. And due to the undersized nature of the lots, in addition to the need for vehicular access as well as off-site parking, the one guideline I think we all know we weren't able to meet is the natural state guideline for hillside developments. So, over the past several years, we've gone to great lengths to address the concerns and the requirements of the city. We've tried to address the concerns of the neighbors as well, knowing that any development by either this applicant or another would meet with, opposition as it's going sort of through their backyards with this easement. But in light of our efforts and the design we presented, we hope the board will recommend the waiver of the natural state requirement, and we hope that you will approve our design submission to the Planning Commission. If you have any questions for me, please feel free.
Thank you. Thank you for being brief. Does the board have any questions of Steve?
I have one. Reading through all the comments from the public, I remembered reading one that there would be trees removed on neighbors' property for the construction of the retaining walls. Is that true?
That is not our intent, no. Any of the trees that we have to remove would be within the easement.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions from the board?
I had one question in regards to color materials.
Yeah.
Dave showed the new kind of retaining wall. And then if you can go back to the other one with the retaining walls, Dave. Yeah, that one there. And the cable rail.
Yes.
Is the cable rail on top of this wall? Is that the end of it?
The cable rail would be along the top of the walls where the walls are very high in order to, for fall protection, essentially.
Okay, and what is the color proposed for the cable rail? Is it as shown? Is it the silver with the silver?
We're open to doing whatever I think the board recommends there. It would probably either be black or silver.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
I have a question. Was Clayton Street, did you investigate coming from Clayton Street? Because
Yes,
it's about 100 feet instead of 480 feet.
It's true. We did investigate coming from Clayton Street. We had a whole another design to do that. In the end, the fire department ruled out Clayton Street as not being able to make the turn to get up to the site. And so because of the fire department issues of getting their trucks around there, it was ruled out as not possible, as well as, down Clayton a little bit, it narrows down and necks down so much that access was deemed better from Ross Street.
Where is your turnaround for the fire trucks?
It is right in front of the house. There it is.
Board member, it's here.
Bring it.
So the
Okay.
truck would come up the driveway here, back around so it could go out. So if you see this area here, this is the turnaround.
Oh, and what about for the back house?
I'm sorry.
The
There is
house in the back, it's like a 43% slope. And how does the fire truck get down?
the fire truck actually just has to be within 150 feet of the furthest most point. So this was vetted early on with the fire department and they signed off on
Okay,
our ability to do that. Yeah.
okay, that's my question.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? I had a couple questions, Steve.
Sure.
One, the pervious payment that you're proposing, exactly what is that?
It's whatever type of block we choose that's, the growable block where we haven't specified a product itself, but it would have to be.
Be like grasscrete or something?
Yeah, like grasscrete or something similar.
Yeah, something that would look maybe a little more natural. I guess it wouldn't be just pervious concrete.
No, we're not proposing pervious concrete. We're proposing pavers that would be.
Other question, Is there other colors for that Versalock?
That
Might
is
be
a good
darker.
question. I think that the palette is fairly limited for the Versalock, but we're open to other colors.
Do they have gray?
They do have gray. I think we were trying to get something a little more natural for the hillside.
Okay. And then as far as the hardy siding, you're proposing a relatively light color. Are there other choices that could be a little more mid-range?
Sure. Yes.
You got a really dark, siding, which is good. The gentleman's gray.
Yeah, I think we were just trying to, create a bit of contrast. But there are other colors that certainly we would, be open to. It's not a hard and fast color.
Okay, that's my questions. Thanks. Let's open it up to the public hearing now. And Leslie, if you could kind of wrangle up public comments if
Yes.
there are any. And then just
Yep.
remember to the members of the public, you have 3 minutes to speak.
I'm actually going to try something out with a timer. So bear with me. So I can
Well,
figure
and
this
I should also
out. I might
remind the
not be able
public
to.
that we have had a lot of public comment sent in writing. So if you could not just repeat that stuff, but just kind of highlight it if you want to, or add something new.
All right. So to speak, please press *9. If you are, I'm sorry, I actually can't share my screen. And oh, yep, let me see the participants. So that's not going to work. That's going to be offline. But anyway, *9 if you are dialing in. Otherwise, use the raise a hand icon. And the first person is Amy Lyke. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. This is Amy Lyke. My husband, Joe. We live on Reservoir Road around the corner. Just a question before I proceed with my comments. Is tongue and groove cedar siding on the side of the house and on the soffit allowed under the WUI guidelines? Because we built a house just around the corner and that was not allowed for us. So that's the first thing. Perhaps you can comment later. I also wanted to mention that this bit about, neighbors not in their backyard that was mentioned before by the developer. I think we all know that one reason why neighbors respond is that they know so much. They really know their area well. We all know this wildlife corridor. We understand what a road would do to it. We understand what the fencing would do to it as far as the passing of animals. We also know the trees, the 37 trees that are slated for removal, and understand in depth the species that would be removed along with the trees. This is on the 2 houses that are being proposed are on a non-conforming lot, a hillside lot. The design guidelines are built into the environmental design and review permit as well as into the code. There's a reason for that. It has nothing to do with who lives next door. It's for the safety of the people inside of the house and for the safety of the people above and below the house. We're a very welcoming neighborhood. It's not a question about not wanting new neighbors. It's about safety. We consider this to be an unacceptable plan. And although we appreciate all the work that's gone into changing it, this two-way street with the street hanging above other people's backyards. And also, it was mentioned by, I think, Dave Hogan or by the developer. It's complicated. It's a complicated lot, right? So it's complicated, or is it unbuildable? I'd like you to consider what is being proposed, what is being sacrificed, and how much, in fact, in this city, we take care that our hillsides are not in jeopardy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next up is Victor Kunin. Victor Kunin, you have 3 minutes.
I hope that the members of the committee had a chance to review the letters submitted by the public. I'm aware that you received many of them today. Please let us know if you did not have a chance to review the letters that you received today. 2, the lot line adjustment will create a steep down-facing driveway with unspecified slope in the panhandle of lot 59 that terminates with a cliff looming directly over our property. Every time a vehicle will be on this driveway, it will present a danger for us. Simply using the current lot lines does not create this danger. 3, the design choice of having landfill on top of the existing road next to our property is wrong. The landfill will be supported by very tall retaining walls that are not reduced on site that are 17.5 feet tall, that will create safety, legal, aesthetic, maintenance, and noise reflection issues. The land is owned by number 56 Clayton, and the design envisions a barrier that will stop the owners of the land and the public from using it as a road. This is unacceptable. A solution would be a better grading and terracing of the applicant's own lots. Please request a redesign. 4, the current tree removal plan envisions removal of almost all trees. Removal of so many trees will destabilize the hillside, and retaining walls are planned to support only part of the slope. Replacing of the significant trees at 3:1 ratio is required, but not planned. Removal of many trees is merely a cost-saving choice on the part of the applicant. Trees on the edge of the development can be saved with a reasonable redesign. Please refer to my letter for examples. 5, the plans falsely states that Ross Street Terrace is a former Buena Vista Street. In fact, these are different streets with very different legal profiles, and there are important property rights implications. The plans fail to show the border between them. Road ownership by 56 Clayton is not clearly marked, and the southern border of this property is not shown. 6, the applicant never provided calculations for the lot 59 size, excluding the panhandle, as required by San Rafael Municipal Code. 7, the current design of retaining walls prevents us from accessing the roadway and cuts our emergency escape route. It's unnecessary, unsafe, and illegal. Plans should be redesigned to provide us with roadway access. 8, the project as shown will cause flooding of 56 Clayton. Please request a redesign. 9, the natural state requirement violation is extreme and should not be allowed. 10, the project as presented fails every single criterion for approval of exceptions as defined in San Rafael Municipal Code. Please request a redesign to meet this criteria. Finally, it is surprising for us that we are considering the designs that are illegal on so many levels. We have raised some of those issues with the city and are waiting for a response. It may be better to first establish the legality of those plans before we consider the design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Benjamin Carnow. Benjamin, you have 3 minutes.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the board. And I'm a resident of Ross Street and a resident of a lot that is adjacent to the proposed Ross Street Terrace. I would like to first point out, as previous public comment has no doubt mentioned, the loss of numerous trees in the easement that would be granted by these exceptions. I've seen in just the plans that were proposed tonight that the proposed replacement is Magnolia grandiflora, the southern magnolia, which, in addition to not being native to this area of California, has a 10 to 30 year maturation time, which means that any trees replaced as a result of the removal of other trees would take at least almost a decade to return to full form and their ability to conduct the functions that trees do to sustain the landscape. In this time of drought and advancing climate change, we can ill afford to remove any vegetation or natural space that remains in our towns and cities, especially in hillside areas such as this, which are prone to erosion. There is also the concern that has been raised about wildlife. As I live on a lot adjacent to this, there is a profusion of wildlife in the area that would be covered by this easement. And the construction activity in this area would indubitably kill or drive away a great proportion of this wildlife, which frankly is unacceptable, I think, to this neighborhood, given the reasons that people choose to live here and the quiet enjoyment that people enjoy of their spaces in this area. Third, the loss of parking on Ross Street would be disastrous for an area that already has grossly insufficient parking for the area. I'm not sure if any members of the board have observed the state of Ross Street and how densely packed the parking is on it, and how almost insufficient as a thoroughfare it is. Realistically, Ross Street should be designated as a one-way street, not a two-way street, given the amount of parking that is expected to be done on it. I fail to see how it is possible for the fire department to actually get a fire truck up the street and make those turns, given the number of people that are already forced to park on the street in the way they are, much less with the loss of 20 to 30 feet of additional parking space. And fourth, I would like to address my comment to the developer, which is to say, if you knew that this project was going to cause such opposition from the inhabitants of the area, why did you persist in this plan? Why did you not instead direct your energies to perhaps reshaping or attempting to work with the city to amend Clayton Street to make it more accessible to the fire department, which I believe would be seen honestly as a public good by all those who live on Clayton Street as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Next up is Jean. Jean, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, we're Jeannie and David Campbell from 56 Clayton Street. We have lived here for 40 years. We have seen 2 serious slides during that time and absolutely agree that all those trees cannot be removed and the natural state cannot be compromised because there will be more slides. And David will take over now.
I just, having looked at the property map of 56 Clayton Street, it clearly shows that much of the project that's planned along the Buena Vista Clayton transition, which is at the southern end of our property, is the building is being done on 56 Clayton Street property. So there is no agreement that has been established for that to be accepted. So this is something that's going to have to be dealt with before any plans can proceed. But the issue where this construction of the fill with the retaining wall and the set of wooden stairs is interrupting the established easement for the public, as well as our right to access our easement along 56 Clayton Street property, which extends all the way up to the area below these houses that are proposed. The installation of these stairs would interfere with our rightful access to that portion of our roadway next to our property. And briefly, on another point, the drainage plan that I've seen shows water being dumped from this project property onto 56 Clayton Street directly, dispersed onto our slope. That's absolutely unacceptable. Any new project should definitely require the drainage from that lot to be directed properly into the city sewage or storm drain system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie and David. Next up is Susan Ginwala. Then you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm sorry, this is Susan's husband, Jay. We live on Ross Street. The parking is definitely a concern on the street. If you drove down Ross Street right now, you'd be hard pressed to find a space anywhere on Ross Street between D and up at Reservoir. But my main question was regarding the fire truck access, as we're all aware of in the last few years, and what an issue that is. And I'm just wondering if, I understand San Rafael has signed off, but whether or not Marin Fire or Cal Fire has any jurisdiction here, because you can envision a scenario where we're in fire season and San Rafael Fire is out somewhere else in Marin, somewhere has resources outside of Marin fighting fire. And if there's a fire in Gersel Park, we don't know where the fire trucks could be coming from or how big they could be. So, you know, you could have a situation where you've got out of town fire trucks, out of state fire trucks potentially, and they need to be able to get up Ross Street, get onto that road and potentially up those driveways. So my main point is wondering if they have an opportunity or have any jurisdiction here to vet the project. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jay, next up is phone number ending in 2995.
Hi, this is Victoria DeWitt, and I submitted a letter, which I'm sure you've all read. These lots should be merged to create a reasonably sized hillside lot. One of the lots is only 4,800 square feet. That's substandard for even the flatlands. Anyway, the board should follow precedent for these types of lots and require that they be merged. The other comment I'd like to make is in the staff report under Design Review Board comments on page 2, one of the comments listed says, had no concerns with the reduction in the amount of minimum natural state. Well, that's just not true. That's not from the minutes that were recorded and approved for June 8th. And that doesn't reflect the board members that were present for that meeting. 3 of the board members mentioned that the applicant should follow the rules, which I'm interpreting to mean they should follow the natural state requirement. And the chair actually mentioned that he was not comfortable with the amount of natural state that was being the reduction in the natural state. So that comment is inaccurate. And anyway, I know that also staff has referred to the natural state as open space. I would just say that open space is a different definition in the municipal code. It should be natural state and it's specific to hillsides. And I think you should uphold the natural state requirement for this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Victoria, something happened. I'm not sure where you went, but hopefully you're okay. Thank you for that. Next up is Susan Miltner. Susan, you have 3 minutes.
Susan, are you there?
Okay, I'm sorry. This is Marco Berti, and I'm the partner with Susan Miltner, and we are on the property in Clayton, 515 Clayton Street. So I want to go back to the previous conversation with Jeannie and Dave Campbell. Totally agree with them. This is a big problem in Clayton Street for, sliding and stuff like this, and close the trees, but also a concern about the drainage because we don't know what is going on. We just out with some problem with flooding, water all over my basement, everything. We just out because the city finally repaved the street. So I would like to know a little more about the drainage. And thank you for listening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Marina Kunin. Yeah, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm Victor's wife. You've heard from him already. We live at 211 Marin Street, so we are right below the 2 lots. You have heard, I'm sure, a lot. There's a lot of concern, and our concerns are not simply, oh, hey, I don't like how the side of the house will look, right? These are obviously, we all have a lot of emotional investments. These are our homes, and we're worried not just about aesthetics, but there's the road specifically. I understand that the lots have to be accessed, but this is not the private property of the lots, and we are we're talking about huge changes with, you know, the terrain is going to be changed a lot, and a lot of this is just choices, right? And design could be made to try to preserve more of the terrain, and that will also fix some of these structural problems that we expect, and, you know, more runoff, higher retaining walls and all of that, there must be alternatives to that. And these are significant issues for all of this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Next up is Len Rifkin. Len, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Len Rifkin Law and Mediation, and I represent some 45 residential units surrounding this project. All of them opposed to this project. And like everyone else has said, no one's opposed to having, our preference would be one home, not two. No one's opposed to the project, but the way it's designed is not going to work, and all of them will follow through all the way up the chain on this, raising our concerns. So what I want to point out to this board for your consideration, because you're supposed to be making a recommendation to the Planning Commission about the design, I start at the top at the general plan, which is the Constitution for Development in the city of San Rafael. And I think that this plan as designed doesn't comply with the general plan, and that should be a concern to you. General plan requires you to preserve natural features. That isn't happening. It requires you to maintain as many significant trees as possible. More than 41 significant trees are going to be taken out. It requires to minimize grading. That isn't happening. We've got 2,000 yards graded, 700 staying on site, and 1,300 staying moving off site. That's 130 trucks in, 130 trucks out. That's 260 truck trips. Avoiding large expanses of walls, and requires tree canopy spaces around new hillside development. None of that does this project comply with general plan requirements. And you've heard over and over again about the planning exceptions now that shouldn't be granted here: the natural state, the lot size, and the slope of the driveway. Why is natural state such a big deal? For all the reasons that you said. We're not, this is Gerstle Park in San Rafael. It doesn't meet the character of their neighborhood. This is a project you might see in Daly City or infill in LA, not Gerstle Park, San Rafael. It's not going to work. Same thing with lot size. You heard one of the persons just speak, and she gave a very good recommendation. The way we can resolve this is we got 2 undersized lots. Let's merge the lots and have one house that can meet all the requirements much better. And then lastly, about the fire truck. Fire has signed off on this, but they have, the reality is that they're not, they don't pick what size apparatus that's going to go there. It's going to be the full-size truck. They have to climb up a mountain 25%. And then when they get to the turnaround, we all know that no one enforces the hammerhead turnaround, that there's going to be cars parked in there and they're not going to be able to turn around. So the reality is fire is going to be very reluctant to drive up a 500-foot driveway. That's the reality of it. They're brave people that work for the fire service, fire department, but they're very concerned about this design. It's not ready for prime time. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Len.
Next up is Peter Marks. Peter, you have, oops, I do that. Here you go. Peter, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this meeting. I'm not going to reiterate all the comments from Amy, Victor, and everyone else in opposition to this project. My wife and I live at 60 Wood Street, which is on the upper side of the proposed Ross Terrace access. We've talked about the natural state, but somehow the natural state calculations don't include that roadway. That is a natural hillside at this point. And none of the calculations have included the impact of putting in that roadway. And I think that impact should be calculated and should be included in the reports that are given to everyone concerned with this project. The fire escape routes, everyone along Ross Terrace can get to that access point and escape in a fire. For example, the retaining walls that are being put up below our property are 4 to 5 feet in height, where we currently walk out of our backyard and use that roadway to walk down Clayton and go to town. We need that access maintained. So there needs to be a design modification so we can get out of our property in case of a fire, because we live at the top of woods and there's no other escape routes except via that backyard. And this impacts other residents at the top of woods as well. To the degree that we've told our neighbors that they can go through our property to get to that roadway to escape in a fire. I didn't see any treatment of the power lines that are going up Ross Terrace that service the new properties, but also other existing properties there. Are those slated to be undergrounded? They should be. They're proposing planting oak trees under these power lines. Those will grow into the power lines. They'll cause a fire hazard, and they'll also block views along those people who live on the upper side of the proposed roadway. So views need to be considered as well. Supposing this is granted, right, Ross Terrace, I would like to see it such that we minimize the commercial traffic, and thereby I mean postal delivery trucks, garbage trucks, from using that roadway. So there should be a requirement that the post boxes be at the corner of Ross Street and that garbage cans be taken to the corner of Ross Street. So you don't have garbage trucks going along that road at 5:36, 6:30 in the morning when the normal pickup times are. It's a very quiet neighborhood, and this should be taken into consideration. The final issue I have is our utilities, that's gas, water, and sewer, are on that Ross Terrace right-of-way. If those retaining walls are built and that access, which meets at Ross Street, if we have a problem, who's responsible for the repair? We recently had to pull a permit with the city to replace a water line that went right down that street. If that now goes under a 9 or 10 foot retaining wall, who's responsible for that? And how are our concerns mitigated regarding future maintenance of those utilities? This needs to be accommodated in the plan. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm not mentioning all the other aspects that were brought up or concerns, but I want to second all those that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Next up is Michael Simler. So you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm chiming in to share my general support for the project. I hear a lot of people's concerns. Some of them have some substance. Most of them seem to be just emotionally based and not based with any logic or reasoning. For example, the wildlife corridor. I mean, clearly the city and the state don't share the same opinion as the neighbors, or they likely would have purchased up these lots and preserved them. And I don't imagine any of the neighbors would volunteer to tear their homes down and revert back to the natural state themselves. Secondly, in terms of the driveway issues, I remember from previous meetings, the property owner proposing to go from Clayton, and then fire department basically shut it down and forced him to come from the other side on Ross Street, which obviously is going to be much more of a substantial impact on everyone, but was not his first choice, and he's being forced to go that way. And obviously it's going to be much more expensive due to the retaining wall height, but I don't imagine he's proposing building the most substantial retaining wall heights that he would want. He's just being forced to follow certain codes that have been proposed by the city. So if the city would offer to, reduce some of the height requirements on that, I'm sure the property owner would be more than happy to lower the impact on everyone around. And thirdly, adding another fire hydrant to the neighborhood would seem to be a benefit for everyone involved, especially a hydrant that would be located up near the homes. That sort of provides a good radius for the fire department to protect all the other homes nearby, where they wouldn't be able to access that if there wasn't a developed road. And finally, just in general, there is a housing shortage going on, and more housing is needed just all around. There's an argument could be made for combining the lots and building one home, but then it would be one big mansion, as opposed to two more reasonable single-family homes that could either be purchased or put on the rental market or what have you. So I understand that it's a big change for the neighborhood because everyone got used to using private property as a public space, but these are private lots that were owned by someone the entire time. And everyone who lived there had the opportunity to know that Street Terrace was a public right-of-way that, or whatever it was not public, not private. The city of San Rafael didn't want it.
Michael, if you could please wrap up, your 3 minutes are over.
Oh, that's it. I can be done. I thought an alarm was going to go. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Next up is Jessica Yarnell Laurie. So you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. My name is Jessica Yarnall Laurie. I live at 131 Ross Street with my family. You might be able to hear crying right now since it's close to bedtime. I'm a mom and an environmental lawyer, and I'm very opposed to this project. My May 2021 comment letter was not addressed in these design revisions. The notice is inadequate and confusing. There was radio silence after the June design board meeting, and then a sudden CEQA and Planning Commission notice that was withdrawn just a day or two before the Planning Commission hearing in December during the holidays. Shrinking these houses by only 200 square feet is not enough. These lots are overbuilt. There is no vested right to build a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. There should be one larger house, 2 smaller houses, or no houses on this property. The parking is still extremely problematic. Ross Street is very congested, and building this new road will take away 6 to 8 parking spots on the street. Essentially, there is one-way traffic on Ross Street. And the only way this project would be feasible is essentially banning parking on one side of Ross Street, which would take away parking for the other people who already live on Ross. The other issue is the retaining walls are extraordinarily high where Ross Terrace meets Ross Street. This will create a traffic and pedestrian hazard. Drivers will not be able to see my young kids who walk and bike along this street on their way to Gerstle Park, or the busy traffic when someone is pulling out of that new road onto Ross Street. There is insufficient open space, meeting a mere 50% of the requirement for green space on the property is not adequate. And as someone else mentioned, this is a general plan requirement. Green space is important for aesthetics, but also mostly for climate change these days. Trees, grass, soil, they all absorb carbon. And I know the previous DRB comments was that this was not an important aspect, but it is the law. And there's no compelling reason to provide an exemption for this. In addition, there were several other concerns noted about the slope of the driveway, concerns about drainage. We're concerned it would inundate our property with water. If anyone was watching the October storms, there was very interesting drainage all around. And there was essentially a flood of water coming down that side of Ross Street. I worry that building Ross Terrace will be channeling this water into our properties across the street. And in addition to all of this, the construction traffic to do all of that grading, pulling out hundreds of dump trucks of dirt, all pose a hazard to the young kids and pedestrians that live on this street, in addition to the noise and the other construction hazards. And of course, fire access. I think another speaker made the point about how realistically those large fire trucks will not be able to go up that driveway. And that's already been proven. If you look at any time there's been a fire alarm in the apartment buildings around here, it literally has shut down all of Ross Street. Haven't been able to access my
Jessica?
house because the fire truck blocked
3
it.
minutes are up if you can wrap up as well.
Sure, I think that essentially encompasses my points. I don't think that these design review revisions address the salient health and safety concerns that exist about this project, and we'd appreciate the DRB recommending that this project be downsized or eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Next up is Patrick Killian. Patrick, you have 3 minutes. And unmute yourself.
Patrick, are you there? Patrick there?
I will remove him and
Go on to someone else.
re-raise his hand. Yeah. Next up is Melinda Benedict. Melinda, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, very good. I would just like to say that the gentleman who said that the very first thing we should do is establish whether these lots are even legal lots. I would just like to remind everybody that that has been established quite some time ago. And I think that the applicant has gone to great lengths to accommodate as many people as he can in the neighborhood, and especially all the board comments, and that that should be taken into consideration, that he's trying to be as considerate as possible. It was not his idea to have to build a new road. However, the fire department mandated that, and the gentleman who brought up the point of other fire departments, the reason that they suggested Ross Terrace is because they wanted the biggest fire engine to be able to go up that road. And I think that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Melinda.
If anyone else wishes to speak, oh, there's Patrick
I see
again.
Patrick's hand raised.
Yeah, Patrick, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can, Patrick. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I was muted before. I couldn't figure out how to.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, first off, thank you for letting me speak. I completely agree with Victoria and Jessica. Victoria DeWitt wrote a letter about the open space, and I'm agreeing with Jessica, who spoke just a bit ago, that we shouldn't be ignoring the natural state guidelines. And we're really jamming 2 houses in undersized lots. And I think it's a wrong and ill-advised precedent. The whole thing about doing this is that it's going to set a precedent for the future that people don't have to really meet the requirements of natural state, and it's just going to go on in the future. So if you do it now, it doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, that's certainly one thing. That being said, the 2 lots are actually the right size for 1 home. Jessica just said that. It's only because a developer has brought these properties that 2 homes are attempting to be squeezed onto these undersized properties. If a homeowner or someone just wanted to build a home, they would have built just 1 house on both of those properties. Secondly, the impact on the neighborhood by building a road from Ross Street to the new homes near Clayton Street would be hugely detrimental and disruptive. That's been mentioned already. Ross Street is already very narrow and congested. Can you imagine the noise, dust and dirt, trucks, workers, and inconvenience that our neighborhood will suffer if this project goes forward? We would probably have to move out during the building process. We're on 209 Marin Street. This would be right against our backyard. Because we're seniors now, we couldn't handle the noise, the interruption and disturbance and loss of our peaceful life, which we've had for the 25 years that we've lived here. And third, we're very concerned that the dirt terraces that compose our backyard, our backyard was just cut into the hillside. It's just terraced. There's no structure there. So we're really concerned that if they're building this road back there, that our hillside could potentially collapse in the midst of all of this construction. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak?
Yeah, if anyone else wishes to speak. Oh, one more. Melinda, you spoke already.
Yeah, you've both spoken already, Melinda.
I'm going to just see for 1 second. Sometimes couples log into the same account, so let's make sure that's not Melinda. If this is someone not Melinda, please
This
speak.
is
If it's
Melinda, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna, yeah. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak, who has not yet spoken, please raise your hand using the raise your hand icon. If you're dialing in, please press *9. Give it a few seconds. And going, oh, one more. Daniel Kelly.
Yes.
You have, bring it close to the wire. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Thank you for hearing me speak. My name is Daniel Kelly. My wife and I are the owners of 135 Ross Street, which is pretty much directly across the street from where this proposed driveway is supposed to come out onto Ross Street. I sent a pretty extensive email to Mr. Hoffman, who I believe is handling the project for the city. I apologize, I didn't prepare any comments, and so this might seem a little disorganized. I think when I was going through all of the documentation that identified Ross Street as a preferred connection point for this driveway to the neighborhood, it really didn't make sense to me how, and I apologize if this has been mentioned before, but it really didn't make sense to me how much emphasis there was on the fact that emergency vehicles would have an easier time making it from Ross Street onto the driveway to access these properties in the event of an emergency. I don't know if anybody really has been down Ross Street, but there's barely enough space on Ross Street to make a right angle turn into a driveway with a normal car, let alone an emergency vehicle like a fire truck or I can't even begin to imagine some of the construction traffic that would have a tough time accessing the property from that street. I think it's likely already been mentioned that Ross Street is barely wide enough, and in fact isn't really wide enough for two normal sized vehicles to pass one another on the street. And oftentimes one has to pull over in order to allow the other one to pass. I know there's a lot of objective criteria that went into the documents that identified Ross Street as the preferred connection point to the neighborhood, but I think anybody that goes down there and actually looks at Ross Street will see that it's not practical at all, or for that matter, safe to connect a driveway at that point. As I said, emergency vehicles wouldn't be able to make that turn into the driveway. And I don't even want to think about a vehicle trying to turn from the driveway onto Ross Street with that blind turn that they would have to make. To me, the safer and more practical alternative would be to choose another route other than connecting to Ross Street. And thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone else wishes to
And
speak?
with that, yeah, if anyone else wishes to speak, please raise your hand using the raise a hand icon or pressing *9 if you are phoning in. And I see no one else wishing to speak.
Can I please be heard?
Oh, yes, I did see Elizabeth.
No.
Has she spoke
Who's
already?
Elizabeth?
Hi there.
Elizabeth, who are you? Are you?
I'm an attorney
Your
representing.
hand raised. Has she spoken already?
Aren't you with the applicant team?
Yes, I am.
We've
Yeah,
already
no,
had
you
the
cannot
applicant,
speak in yeah,
presentation then.
no.
Thank you. All right, so no one else in the public wishes to speak, Leslie? No other
No,
hands raised?
sir.
All right.
Nope.
Then we will close the public hearing and put it back to the board members for questions, follow-up questions of staff or the applicant. Does anyone have any questions? Sharon?
I have a question. One of the commenters said that they were their land was being built on and nothing could happen until they had an agreement. Is that true?
Not to our knowledge, that's not true. This is Steve.
Dave Hogan, do you have a response?
Board member, I'm not sure exactly, what that person was referring to. There are some beliefs by some of the neighbors that no one else is allowed to do anything on Ross Terrace.
This neighbor said he lived at 51 Clayton and that the retaining wall was being built on his property. Is that incorrect?
My initial impression is that is correct, that it's not being built on his property.
Okay.
Allow me, I will take a moment and go check exactly where 51 Clayton is. But I don't think his statement is correct. If the board can continue their discussion, I will check and get you a more definitive answer.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
And I can let you, yeah, and I'll let you know definitively, apologies, that if by any chance there is any retaining wall on the plan set that is on a private property, that would not be permitted and that would need to be moved off the private property. That's not a permissible action.
Thank you. Any other board members have comments, or I mean, not comments at this point, questions?
I have one.
Yes, Jeff.
I mean, a lot of big questions have been asked tonight. Victor Coonan brought up a lot of questions about some legalities, being able to exit his property in a fire, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody else brought up it wasn't legal to be sending some of their drainage towards Clayton. I'm just sort of curious if the city has any comment on can they comment on any of those issues?
That would be Dave again.
Dave, can you answer?
Yeah, that would be, sorry, I was researching the previous comment. Sorry.
You have to do two things at once, Dave.
I know, or at least three things at once. Yes, absolutely. My apologies. The project overall is not altering the drainage pattern based upon the plans that we've seen. There is a portion of the project that will flow toward Ross Street. There is some of the project that flows toward Clayton, and there's some that appears to go overland from above the site, down across the site onto some of the properties along Clayton and Marin. So I know there was a concern that some of the concept plans that showed runoff coming from the detention basin between the two retaining walls below the lower unit was being dumped onto one of the houses. As I read the plans, I saw that the dissipators were putting the the runoff coming from there back into the existing channel. But we haven't seen construction level plans, and I know that the Public Works Department is not going to allow this project, if it was approved, to dump water onto somebody else's property unless that's the way it was going already.
And what about some of the questions of people not being able to exit their properties because of these retaining walls in the case of a fire?
Well, there's probably some truth in that. If someone wanted to say, you know, go away from the area of Marin Street, which is on the south or the east. Sorry, I'm getting confused. East, thank you. I guess if the fire was burning in town and you wanted to go up onto the hill, it could slow things down. If the board has a concern that the applicant should provide additional opportunities for residents trying to evacuate in that area, then that would be a recommendation that I think the board should provide to the Planning Commission and City Council, and then those aspects could be incorporated into their final design.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, just following up on that question of the access to Ross Street Terrace. My understanding is Ross Street Terrace, even though it was designated as a city right-of-way, was not accepted by the city. So therefore, it is a private right-of-way. Is that correct?
The best information I have at this time is that, yes, it was offered a very long time ago, but not accepted. So the city attorney could provide a more knowledgeable description. My understanding is that it is in effect a private right-of-way providing access to the lots that front on it.
Right. So then, and so this private right-of-way, Ross Street Terrace, will be, I guess, jointly owned by these two lots and jointly maintained by these two lots. They will not be maintained by the city. They will not be owned by the city. And so they have to be taken care of by these two private lots. Is that correct? So they're essentially private property.
Yeah, it's not a city, as I understand it, it's not a city right-of-way.
Right.
And that the people accessing it will be responsible for maintenance. But I am not in a position to provide a definitive legal answer on that. As a planner, I occasionally play attorney, but I don't have a law degree, and so it's merely my opinion. But I noticed that the attorney for the applicant has raised their hand, so this may be an opportunity, if the chairman and the board is interested, to get a more informed legal opinion.
Well, I think that would help. I think you're talking about Len Rifkind.
I believe it's Ms.
Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth. She is the attorney for the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well then let's ask her.
Hi there.
Hello.
Yes, there has been communication between the city attorney and the applicant's attorney regarding this access, and there has been confirmed and acknowledged access to this property. Under California law, it says that if you have a easement and people want to use it, then they pay to improve it proportionate to their use. Nobody that has easement rights over it has yet to desire to improve it. If they wanted to improve it and pay proportionate to their use to, for example, acquire some pedestrian path down to it, that could be allowed. The improvement, as we see it, will improve the current access by improving it. And if there's a desire to, connect steps to someone's backyard or what have you, that would be fine and acceptable, and we'd be happy to modify the plan in that way. But the applicant can't be charged with, providing connectors to every other private property. because the rule is you provide it proportionate to your use. So again, we hope that this access is going to certainly make it easier for fire. And we believe fire is opined on that. And I hope that answers your question.
It doesn't actually. You're saying that it's an easement. Is it an easement or is it a city of right of way that the city has abandoned or never taken ownership of?
It was offered to dedication for the city. The city never accepted it. And there's a presumption that it is not a public right of way when the city doesn't accept it and 25 years has passed. The rule is that when a street is shown on a subdivision map, then it is every owner of the subdivision has a right of access should they wish to use it.
So this roadway, this right of way was created when this whole subdivision, not just these two lots, but the whole subdivision on Marin and Ross Street all were created? Is that what you're saying? So the easement services all these lots?
It does, and state law says that the easement can be improved by people proportionate to their use, and that is their legal obligation to pay for it. So to date, nobody has wanted to improve it, and these owners have a right to improve it, and the city attorney has acknowledged it. And also based on the fact that the city approved these lots in the subdivision, the city affirmed in doing so that these lots have legal access, both of them, not just one.
But then now you're saying even though these two lots improve this easement, the easement is still pertinent to all these other subdivided lots, and they all have the rights to this easement. Is that correct?
They have a right of use, and if they want to improve them for their specific use, they could apply to it, and that should be allowed. So neighbors will continue to have a right of access. And again, to the extent they want to improve their specific right of access, they can do so. And state law, there's a specific statute says that they pay proportionate to their use.
So the neighbors, if they feel that this easement gives them some kind of exit access in case of a conflagration, that they would, at their expense, be able to access this easement by stairways or whatever.
That's
Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
Jeff, did you have any questions about that? Okay. Does the staff have any other, I'm sorry, does the board have any other questions? Sharon?
Who owns this land now? Whose property? Who's paying taxes on this land?
That's an excellent question. It's not currently identified as assessed properties on the assessor's records. So I'm not sure anybody is, but I cannot speak definitively. And I believe I have an answer on the 51 Clayton property as well, if there is a desire to hear. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. This is Clayton as it goes up the hill. So 51 Clayton is this brown house right here beside the road. And so the person commenting said that they were concerned with flooding impacts on this site. The proposed project isn't altering the drainage between here and the project site.
I think it was 56 Clayton.
Ah.
Okay. Yeah, they were saying that there's something that they're building on their property.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was the issue.
Yes, I'm not aware of them building on the property, and this doesn't help me, so I'm going to stop sharing that. 56 Clayton is the house immediately below.
Yeah.
It's, okay, let me share this if I may. Appreciate your patience on this. And so here's Ross Street over here on the left, and here's the access drive. 56 Clayton is here. It's down below the site. The existing low flow drainage based upon from what I saw when I was out there, appears to come down, and then low flows follow down and around. Higher flows look like they may just come over the edge. We did get a comment on the environmental document commenting that they've had existing flooding issues. I can't speak to that. I do know that the proposed drainage plan in this area shows drainage coming from this middle tier here, the detention basin, rejoining the natural flow area here and following down here. The property owner has assumed that the drainage is going to be dumped out on this way. The preliminary plans don't show it. And I don't think that was what intended, but I can't make any guarantees.
But wasn't the question though, that the property owner thought that they were building on their property?
It doesn't, as I look at the plans, they don't appear to be building on their property.
Yeah.
Let me expand it here.
Maybe they just misunderstood, or as sometimes people do not know where their property line actually is.
And that may be the case in a lot of areas. Fence lines don't always match property lines. As I'm looking at this, the property line runs here based upon this.
Looks like the retaining wall is set back about 2-3 feet.
Yeah, it's set back, it's within the right of way. Ultimately, I would expect if the project was approved and there was construction plans, that more detailed plans would be submitted to guarantee that the construction is either off the adjacent property or has the approval of the adjacent property owner.
Right, okay. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome, sir.
Are there other questions of staff? I had a question. One of the public mentioned a couple things about trash pickup and utility lines, that there are existing utility lines in that right of way. Is that the case? And if that is, how are they to be handled? I don't know if you would be able to answer that, Dave, or possibly the applicant.
Maybe the applicant can have more detailed answers on that. I know that if the utility lines are there, they're going to be respected in any construction. You just don't get to cut somebody off.
Well, no, I guess the point is though that if they're doing this, the question is if they're doing this improvement to actually put in a roadway with retaining walls, if there are utility poles there, what's going to happen to them, and are they going to be put back, or are they going to? I think the member of the public said, are they going to be undergrounded? So that was the question. I know they can't just disrupt them, but I mean, ultimately, what's going to happen to them if there are utility poles there?
There is at least one utility pole it looks like on an adjacent property right near the corner of the access drive and the driveway up to the upper unit. There's an existing pole there.
Oh, but there's none along Ross Street.
As far as, the plans show maybe another one there as well, closer to Ross Street. So there may be above ground utilities. They would have to be maintained, as are. I don't think there's a requirement to underground private access drive, but I'm afraid I'm not sure. I cannot give the board a definitive answer on that. That's more of a Public Works Department issue.
Well,
I'd like to add one thing, if I can, because it sounded to me, and I may have misheard, that the person who brought up the utility was that there might be some underground utility lines running from their property into the easement, and that the construction of the retaining walls might block access to it. So I will tell you that I don't know, Dave, if you have an answer whether there are underlying, but this is the first I've heard of it. I'm not the project planner, but I will guarantee, so hopefully you're listening still in the attendee list, that we are going to look into this, because the intent is not like if you have a utility line that has to be accessed and you have like this, some type of access to it has to be retained. I don't know if that will be a grate or what have you, but it will definitely be addressed prior to going to council.
Can we ask the applicant? Is the applicant still with us?
I am.
Do you know if there are utility lines along Ross Street Terrace? And if there are, which ones are they and what is going to happen to them?
I can't speak definitively. I do not know if there are. I think there very well could be going down the hill right where it connects to Ross Street.
I
If
can
that
see
is the
it on your
case,
survey. There's a water line, a sanitary sewer line on your survey that you provided.
and in that case, we would, of course, we have to bring our own sanitary sewer and our own water line up from Ross Street as part of our utilities to service our two lots. So as part of the improvements for the roadway, we would be bringing utilities all the way up Ross Street Terrace from Ross. And if there are existing lines coming from above, we would certainly either connect those into the lines we're bringing up or reroute the lines such that they're interfering with the walls that we have to put in.
Okay. While we have you, what's going to happen? The other thing was brought up about the trash pickup. And given that this is a private driveway, have you talked to Marin Sanitary as far as, are they going to be coming up the driveway or are you going to be taking the trash down the driveway?
You know, to be honest, we haven't gotten that far. We certainly will address those sorts of issues. And it was a valid point to bring up, something we actually really hadn't thought too much about.
Yeah.
But certainly, you know, going forward, if we have a project, we would address all of those issues. And I imagine that would be part and parcel to whatever sort of maintenance agreement we have to provide as part of maintaining this roadway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions of the staff or the applicant from the board? Last chance, seeing none. Then I'd like the board to offer some comments with the revised set of plans that we've been presented. Sharon, would you like to start?
Well, I have issues with the not providing enough natural, what's it called, natural space, natural
state.
Yeah.
Natural state.
Yeah, 50% is I can't really agree with that. And I think the slope of that driveway is very high. And I would be surprised that the fire truck can really fit up there. I've done stuff on hills and nobody ever let me do this. So I have serious reservations about this.
Any other comments on the other parts of the design?
No, but I reserve the right to think of more.
Okay. Jeff, we have your comments. Are you with us, Jeff?
I'm with you.
Oh, there you go.
I may have to take a deep breath and think a little bit before this one. Yeah, a simple answer to a not so simple question. I mean, obviously, if these are buildable lots, they have to have some way to get a driveway out, and they're not allowed to go through Clayton. So the only option is what they're doing right now. And obviously, the neighbors have a lot of concerns, but if this is going to be a buildable lot, then the question is whether it's a well-designed road or not. And I think they've jumped through a lot of hoops. And at this point, I'm not sure what they could improve on that. As far as, you know, the lots are legal non-conforming. So they have every right to build two houses. And I suspect they need to build two houses just to be able to help justify building this road or this long driveway. We certainly have had instances in the past on the board where we've made some natural state exceptions based on site-specific issues. And I think this is probably one of them, and I can support the reduction in natural state. And I really don't believe this sets any bad precedent for any other project we're ever going to look at. The very simple answer to the question is I missed the last meeting, so I focused a lot of my review of this project on the board's comments and on whether the applicant had met them. And for the most part, I thought the applicant did a pretty good job of resolving the issues that the board had with the application the last time it came through. Just some kind of design minutiae sort of things. On the trees, the magnolia is probably a big departure from all the other really nice choices they made from California natives. So that's probably worth another look. My small sample size experience with ironwood is it grows unbelievably slow, and they probably should take another look at that tree. And I agree that the pewter color that Chair Paul brought up earlier probably should be darker. And that's it for me for now.
Thank you. Sarah?
Sure. I remember this project from the last time we took a look at it, and I think we spent, a good deal of time talking about what we are, I guess, limited in commenting on versus what's appropriate for planning or others to comment on. So I think, there are a lot of, there were a lot of concerns about safety and access raised. Again, the fire department is, making that determination, not us here, if the parcels are accessible. And with safety and evacuation routes, I don't feel like that's appropriate to comment on. But I do think, those concerns are obviously in the neighbor's mind, and I don't feel like I understand how they're all being addressed in this plan. But again, I don't think that's our purview to comment on those. So things I want to focus on again are following up from our last round of comments, the retaining wall height and design. I think, Jeff just said the comments have all been addressed. I feel like they've been tweaked. I don't think there's been any major changes. All of the refinements we saw are pretty minimal, although they were all of the items that we brought up were, tweaked to some extent. The retaining wall height and design, that the peak of the height at the entry has been reduced. It's still a big wall, 9 feet, I think is, incredibly significant. Going from a poured in place product to kind of this more cinder block looking product, I don't really see any design improvement necessarily. I kind of agree with some of the inquiry about different colors, that it might, if it was more of a gray color and then where it was abutting the natural landscape, the metal rail was black, so it blended in with the background. And then if it's like terracing retaining walls, you might have it a lighter color. I think it helped to disguise it, but it's still a significant wall. The size of the residences, they've been reduced, but not a lot. I would say not really. They look the same, like they're, pretty much filling out the lots to the extent possible. Guest parking, that has been adequately addressed. I'd say that one has been checked off the list. And then the impervious area being changed to pervious area definitely has gone in the right direction. Again, in the very limited open space that's being provided. So I think I was going to ask if we could look at the slide that had the exceptions that are being asked for on the project. I don't know, Dave, if you can bring that up.
Yes, I can. One moment, please.
Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
It's okay. I have to be.
3 things at once.
Yeah, I have to be given an opportunity to do that. So let me go to the plans. Thank you. And which particular exhibit? I'm sorry, the
exclusive exceptions that.
The exceptions, yes. There we go. So there's one for natural state, the natural open space requirement, and the other is for the driveway slope on the access drive going in. There's about 70 feet of that driveway after you get in a little bit that is almost 25% on the plans. And according to the city code, 18% is the normal standard. You're allowed to go up to 25% with an exception. And so
Okay.
the issue is, if you lower the slope, you increase the grading and end up increasing the height of the retaining walls. That would be my only cautionary observation. Is that you could lower the slope, but you're going to have to move more dirt to do it. But I certainly understand the board's concern with the slope of the driveway. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I guess one follow-up. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I apologize, but on page 6 and 7 of the staff report are the findings that need to be made for the exception. And the reason this project is coming, partially the reason this project is coming to you is because of the exceptions which require a recommendation by the DRB. And several of the exceptions, the findings do comment, or the finding has to do with the design. So I can either share my screen or I could read it out loud, or I don't know if you have access to those findings.
That's the share screen, Leslie.
Can the board see my screen? This is a discussion. Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I could see your screen. And Leslie, I do remember reading those. I'm trying to really focus on answering the questions. So I appreciate if you could share that to just kind of.
Yeah, so I'm going to just, so one is that there are special circumstances, I hope this isn't too small, applicable to the property or land use, including but not limited to the size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings that warrant granting of a minor exception from the strict application of the standards in this title. The second is the general welfare finding that isn't particular to design review, but the granting of the exception would not be detrimental or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity of the development site or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. The next two are really where DRB input is helpful. The project design alternative meets the stated objectives of the hillside design guidelines to preserve the inherent characteristics of hillside sites, display sensitivity to the natural hillside setting and compatibility with nearby hillside neighbors, and then maintain a strong relationship to the natural setting, and alternative design solutions which minimize grading, retain more of the project site in its natural state, minimize visual impacts, protect significant trees, or protect natural resources, result in a demonstrably superior project with greater sensitivity to the natural setting and compatibility with and sensitivity to nearby structures. Those are the 4 findings.
Thank you, Leslie. Can you, I'm just focusing on one thing. It says these are the requirements for a minor exception. And is there any how would you define minor exception? How are we to define minor exception?
Yeah. So just, that is not defined in the ordinance. So I leave that up to
us. Okay. Thank you. Sarah, did you have some more comments?
No, I think my other comment is agreeing with both you and Jeff on the pewter color, just that I don't think a highly contrasted palette is appropriate for the site, but kind of darker overall colors still having some variation can be achieved by substituting that color in the palette.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Don Blaney, are you there?
Okay, well, I guess going last, everything's been covered already. I think I generally agree with the board and all the comments that have been made. I know after leaving the meeting last time, we had sort of a laundry list of things that we'd asked for. It seems like they've touched on all of them, maybe not as much as we'd like, but at least they've gone to a great deal of effort. I also believe if we're going to call these buildable lots, I think they've done the best job they can. Very, very difficult. I know I was hoping that there was some way that third lot could be incorporated into these 2 lots and the overall project being 2 lots, that would help with the natural state also. I don't see how that final lot's ever going to get developed. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else.
Okay. Then I'm last, Don, not you.
Oh, that's true.
Well, I feel very uncomfortable about this project at this point. I think a lot of issues have been brought up, and we brought up some, the public has brought up some. The applicant has done a remarkable job of trying to address our issues, and it's a very complicated site and a very complicated project. And I think, like Sarah said, they've tweaked the design a bit, and I don't think it's enough, quite frankly. I'm becoming more convinced, you know, whatever is built there is going to have this driveway. That's a given. If you put a 400 square foot shack on this property, it would still have to have a driveway. And the applicant, I think, has probably reduced the driveway retaining walls to about the minimum, unless, you know, they reduce the driveway from a 25% to an 18% or maybe even a 20%. 25% is awfully steep. I don't know how the fire department feels about that, but they've signed off on it, so I guess they know what they're doing. They probably also figure that the houses are going to be fully sprinklered, so they're not going to have to be there very quickly. But at the same time, I'm still concerned about the natural state requirement. The exception to that is asking, basically not a minor exception. I would say it's a major exception to ask us to approve or to recommend approval of a 50% reduction in the natural state requirement. And so the question is, how could we have a better finding for the exception to the natural state requirement? They are buildable lots. They were accepted in 1963, so we have that issue that it's kind of decided. And I'm thinking these lots are roughly about 2/3 of what they're required to be. I think the requirement is 7,500 square feet, and these are roughly 5,000 square foot lots. Is that correct, Leslie or Dave?
Yeah, the total site is between 10 and 11,000 square feet. So if you divide it in half, they're both would be in the 5,000 square foot range.
And they should be 7,500 square feet if it was done today, right?
Yes, that is correct. If the lots were subdivided today, they'd have to be at least 7,500 square feet each.
So what I'm getting at is this: the 5,000 square foot lots are roughly 2/3 of what would be required. So I would feel more comfortable if their exception was providing 2/3 of what was required for the natural state, not 55%. So that's I have a hard time making that a finding for the exception to the natural state requirement. Possibly one way of doing that would be to reduce the footprint of the house and make it taller, make it a 3 or 4 story house. That's a possibility. That would require a redesign. But I think that's, you know, looking very carefully at the findings that we have to make for these exceptions, I do have a problem with that particular natural state requirement. I'm becoming convinced that, quite frankly, even though these are 2 buildable lots, the applicant might be better served to produce 1 house on these 2 lots. It could even be a bigger house. They would probably make the natural state requirement a lot easier. They'd only have 1 driveway and 2 guest parking spaces. They could make a bigger house. It'd be worth more money. It may not be worth as much as the 2 smaller houses, But I think that may be the compromise that might have to be made to make everything work here. Because, you know, we're looking at how this fits into the environment, how it fits into the neighborhood, and what it does to the land. And I'm not convinced that this is the best solution. So I would agree with some of the other things as far as the colors. You know, we should go to a darker block for the retaining wall of the driveway. A darker color for the hardy siding, so it's not quite as contrasty. It's not as light a color, but I think we're dealing with small issues, and I'm not comfortable with these two houses, with the exception of the natural state requirement. So I applaud the applicants for trying to address these things as much as possible. The pervious pavement helped a lot. The 2 guest parking spaces meets the requirement. The cable rails for the guardrails helps reduce that. But the natural state requirement, I think, is a real sticking point. So that's my comments. Does anyone want to discuss anything further, or should we ask for some kind of a summary from Leslie?
I'd like to make one quick comment. In some ways, there's like, squeezing a balloon, and every time you squeeze it, it pops out in a different place. So, I mean, you can reduce the footprint, you can get more natural state, but then you're running up against the height requirements. So, I'm not quite sure how this all kind of settles itself out. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add too, I think we heard some concern with the natural state and the size of the houses, but that's regardless of the size of house, it's going to require this driveway, which, in looking at the way the site is developed and in hearing the comments, that is the major, the more significant impact. So I guess I'm not focused on it becoming 1 house or 2 house. It's, regardless, you're going to have that access issue. So I think
you're right. I think the public has to recognize that whatever is built there, the public has said they recognize that something's going to be built there. It's not that they're against building there, although probably some people are. But if anything is going to be built there, it's going to have a driveway, and that to put a driveway in, I mean, even if the driveway slope was reduced to 18%, there's still going to be some tall retaining walls. So, and then if there's an issue of being an easement, the public has to recognize that, yeah, they can access that driveway if that's legal. I don't know if that is, but they're going to have to make their own improvements to do that. If they look at that as some way out in case of a disaster, they're going to have to build a stair up to the driveway or whatever to get out. But I'm trying to think that if there was a better way to do this project that would meet more of the requirements so that we could make the findings. I don't see the findings being made.
Yeah, I mean, one question I have, sorry, Jeff, is the, these are buildable lots. And why on the list of exceptions do we have having a house located on each of those lots as needing an exception to do so? Right?
Well, the exception was because the natural state, the 2 exceptions.
Well, that was the 4th exception, right? There were 2 exceptions for building a house on each of those parcels. So are they?
Well, we have to ask. I thought the exceptions were only for the driveway slope of 25% and the natural state exception.
Chairman Paul, if I may chime in, there's an exception requested for each of the 2 lots. And in both cases, it's the minimum natural state. There is a second or third, depending on how you count it, exception for the driveway slope coming in. So whether or not one house is built or two houses are built, there is still the requirement that unless the city approves a different driveway design, which would require more grading and tire retaining walls, there will need to be a exception for the driveway slope on between 70 and 80 feet of the driveway just coming in from Ross Street. There's just too much topography there to deal with it gracefully any other way.
If there was a smaller footprint of the house, or if there was a single house instead of two houses, there would be more natural state, so that perhaps they could meet the natural state requirement. Or if they still need an exception to the natural state, it would be in fact a minor exception rather than what I consider a major exception. When you're asking for an exception to only preserve half of the lot in natural state, that's major. Not half of the lot, half of the requirement.
Yes, sir, I understand, but I think as the planning manager pointed out, that distinction is not found within the municipal code.
That's just a discretionary from us. I mean,
yes, yeah.
Some of the board members might feel that this is a minor exception. I don't. That's all I'm saying.
So point of
more comfortable with something, like I said, roughly proportional to the difference between what's actually required, the 7,500 square foot lot and the 5,000 square foot lot. So that's about 2/3. So if they could provide, say, 65 to 67% of the required natural state, that to me would be reasonable.
So I think we have competing priorities, right, that we're asking for on the available land, because I'm assuming that the natural state cannot allow the firehead turnaround, the hammerhead, right?
Well,
no, that wouldn't be exactly.
I'm not sure I have an answer to that. I know that the fire department and public works departments, I would be surprised if they allowed development without providing for a turnaround for fire equipment.
Right, I'm saying that's a priority, right, over open space, because you need to have it support the weight of a fire truck. So we have competing priorities in the space around any structure in order to, turn the fire truck around. So if it's a grasscrete, it might look more similar to, open space or natural space, but it's not going to be able to be counted to those requirements, right?
It's not natural.
To that square footage. Right.
Yeah, as I understand the code requirements, putting in pavers in the access drive, I don't think that would qualify as natural state.
No.
And I think the board member is correct in identifying the trade-offs that are involved in the project. I think to put words in the planning manager's mouth, I think we'd like a recommendation from the board as to whether the planning commission and city council should consider approving the project or not approving the project, and then whatever other insight and direction you could provide would also be appreciated.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Any other comments on the board?
I have a comment. I wonder if all the paving of that driveway is included in the open space calculation. Because I bet if you added that in, their number is way worse than 50%.
I don't think it could, Sharon, because what we've determined is that's an easement.
Right.
Literally is owned by the entire subdivision.
Oh.
It's not owned by these two lots.
I see. Okay.
All they're doing is improving it, but they're not owning it. So I mean, I don't think it would be fair to count that in their lot area.
I would just make one comment that, in terms of the natural state, that, by making the houses smaller to come closer to meeting that requirement, do you just kill the project economically? Because given, the expensive road that they need to build, obviously they need to have some return on their investment with their houses. And does this whole project die because they don't meet their natural state requirement?
Well,
Just-
that's why I would think that they might be better off with one larger house. It would eliminate one driveway, 2 guest parking spaces. And so they would probably get much closer to the natural state requirement with a bigger house. Yeah, I'm not convinced that these 2 houses so close to each other anyway are gonna be there as desirable as they think.
Well, that certainly is an interesting question for the applicant.
Anyway, any other comments, or should we, do we have a motion from the board to recommend to the planning commission what to do with this project?
While you're waiting, I can read you the definition of natural state.
Okay.
Which is, it means all portions of lots that remain undeveloped and undisturbed, grading, excavating, filling, and/or the construction, roadways, driveways, parking areas, and structures are prohibited. Incidental minor grading for hiking trails, bicycle paths, equestrian trails, picnic areas, and planting and landscaping, which enhances the natural environment, are permitted when approved through an environmental and design review permit.
That's pretty clear. Thank you, Leslie. Would one of you like to make a motion? Who would like to make a motion?
Do we need to draw lots as to who has to make a motion?
Sounds like it.
I guess I'm not sure I
Do
have
we,
enough.
do we have to
clarity.
make a decision tonight? Can we ask the applicant if they'd like to continue this, to think about what they've heard tonight?
I think we would like to have a decision tonight, a recommendation. Now, the recommendation does not need to be approval. It could be denial, but it would be helpful if it is either approval or denial that you include any specific reasons for a denial, if that's the case, as well as Dave mentioned, any conditions that you may wish to add or request are added as the project moves forward. So though you didn't ask here, Paul, usually you ask me for consensus items, and there was one consensus, mostly consensus. There was no opposition, so everyone who spoke about it was in consensus that maybe the colors could be a little darker, both of the retaining walls in the driveway as well as the hardy plank, and not to have as much of a contrasting palette. So that was one consensus item. Wanted to throw it out there. You're getting there.
We didn't really discuss it because of these other issues, but I think also Jeff brought up a changing of some of the tree selection, and it sounded good to me, so I would agree with him. And I don't know, Don, do you agree?
Yeah, I'll chime in too. I'm not an advocate of the ironwood or the magnolia, so I agree completely with Ken.
Yeah, so it sounds like we want something, if this is going to go forward one way or the other, a faster growing species, and something that is not the ironwood or the magnolia, right?
It's more appropriate, yes.
And I do think they could build something that could come closer to the open space requirement if they change the shape, size, or square footage of the houses. It's possible. They just have to not build such big houses.
Yes, well, that's what I'm getting at. But anyway, so we have a consensus on the landscaping, or at least the tree selection, Leslie, and we have a consensus on the color scheme that needs to be a little darker in the driveway retaining walls and the hardy siding on the houses. So those are 2 things we agree with. And so then it's just a matter of someone making a motion to either recommend approval or denial. These exceptions, basically, first, I guess, huh?
I think that's an important distinction in terms of the exceptions. I think that would be a good place for the board to start with.
Right, because I think if we recommend approval for the exceptions, then we can go forward with the environmental design. But the exceptions are basically like a variance, so.
I would agree. If the board as a group cannot agree with the exceptions, then that kind of points you down the direction of your recommendation.
Should we read the exception and see if we all agree or disagree? Like, I don't think it's a minor point either.
Leslie, could you put up those exceptions again? The findings for the exceptions.
Yes. Where did I put the staff report? Hold on, I closed it. You want to talk about trees? No,
No, we've talked about trees.
I know you got there.
I mean, I think what I heard was on the open space that we're not comfortable approving it at the percentage of coverage it's shown currently, but would like to recommend that it be increased to near 66%, right?
That's what I
Versus-
suggested.
Yeah.
I've got the findings for the exceptions here, Leslie, if you don't have it.
Oh, I wasn't sharing. I forgot to hit share. I found them. Forgot
you got
to
it.
hit share screen.
Good.
So, and I just want to, you're making a recommendation. You don't so much as need to make the findings. That will be the city council, but provide a recommendation towards them on the design aspect of the project related to these findings.
So go up to the first one, the first bullet point. That there are special circumstances applicable to the property or land use, including but not limited to the size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings that warrant granting of a minor exception from the strict application of the standards in this title. So that's one. Then the next one is, or should we go down and actually poll everyone?
Maybe we should poll.
Okay. How does everyone feel about that one? That there are special circumstances that warrant granting of a minor exception.
And so this is talking about the slope of the driveway.
The slope and the natural state. There's two exceptions, basically. The slope of the driveway from 18% to 25%, and then the natural state, which is roughly 51 and 55% of what is actually required. So the question is 25% a minor exception from the 18%, and is 51 and 55% a minor exception from 100% of the requirements? I just poll everybody. Leslie, you want to poll or?
I can do the honors. I think there is the issue about the definition of minor, and but this
that's like I say,
exception really, or this,
everyone.
Yeah, this
Whether
finding actually has more to do with. Yeah, okay. The finding actually has to do with the special circumstances. So if you want to address both or one, that would be great. Board Member Blaney, comments?
Well, I think all these are characteristic to the exemption because of the shape of the lots, the topography, the location. Doesn't this support not having to fit 100% of the open space?
So you just say yes or no. You agree that there's special circumstances that support this?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Next.
Board Member Kent.
Yes.
Board Member Kowalski.
Yes on the driveway, no on the open space.
Vice Chair Reggie
Yes.
and Chair Paul.
I'd say yes on the driveway, no on the open space. So next bullet point, granting the exception would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare.
Blaney,
I'm thinking. Except not, well, I'd have to agree with that, yes.
Board Member Kent,
Yes.
Board Member Kowalski,
I'm sorry, please repeat what we're,
Granting the exception would not be detrimental or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity of the development site or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. This is the exception to the driveway slope and the natural state requirement.
I guess I say no. I still agree with the driveway and disagree with the natural site.
Okay. So the driveway would not be detrimental, but the natural state would, okay.
Yes.
Vice Chair Reggie,
I think I'm saying the opposite of Sharon, that the driveway
Would be
would not-
detrimental,
would be detrimental, but not the open space.
okay.
and Chair Paul.
I think I'd say no to both. The driveway and the natural state. Next bullet point. Project design alternative meets the stated objectives of the hillside design guidelines to preserve the inherent characteristics of hillside sites, display sensitivity to the natural hillside setting and compatibility with nearby hillside neighborhoods, and maintain a strong relationship to the natural setting. This again is for the natural state and the driveway.
Board Member, I feel like I should mix this up. Board Member Blaney.
That's not mixing it up.
No,
Okay.
I know.
it'll make it easier to,
Sorry.
you're probably making a big list, right?
Yeah, try-
Some kind of
Well,
matrix.
For the roadway, yes. For the open space or whatever we're calling it, I'm gonna say no.
Natural state.
Natural state.
Board Member Kent,
I think given the circumstances, it may not be possible to do that, so I'm going to say no.
Board Member Kowalski,
Yes to the driveway, no to the natural state.
sorry. Vice Chair Reggie,
Same answer as Jeff, no.
and Chair Paul.
I would say no to both. Okay, so the fourth bullet. Alternative design solutions which minimize grading, retain more of the project site in its natural state, minimize visual impacts, protect significant trees, or protect natural resources result in a demonstrably superior project with greater sensitivity to the natural setting and compatibility with and sensitivity to nearby structures.
No.
That's no. Is that Blaney?
Yes. No.
Okay. Board Member Kent,
Same answer as before. I think given the circumstances, it's not possible. No.
Kowalski, Board Member
No.
Kowalski,
No.
okay. Vice Chair Reggie,
Yeah, given the circumstances, no. it's not possible.
And no, Paul.
No. So it
So-
almost, can you
so-
summarize?
Yeah, so board members, this is what I heard. On the first bullet point. of-
Dave, I
excuse
could do this
Okay, sorry.
as the secretary.
I was
Thank you.
taking notes,
That's all
but
right.
I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so yeah, no, definitely correct me if I have it wrong. So the exception for number one, it was overwhelming. I should say the as a consensus, it would be yes. There was a little divide between Chair Paul and Board Member Kowalski regarding the driveway and the
Natural state.
the natural state. Yeah. For number two, yes. Oh, it is again a split on the driveway and the natural state. So again, split between Vice Chair Reggie and Board Member Kowalski. But otherwise there are 2 yeses and 1 no. So I guess that one, if it were a consensus, would be supported. Number 3 was 2 splits with Blaney and Kowalski, with yes on the road and no on the natural state, and 3 no's. So I guess that one not be supported. And number 4 was all no's. So that was a consensus. And I just want to clarify that when you said no, you meant it could not be supported, or that is what the no meant.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if I'm correct, all 4 findings would have to be made positively, affirmatively, to recommend an exception. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but none of those 4 bullet points were agreed to. There was no consensus on any of those 4 bullet points for either the driveway or the natural state. Is that correct or not? That's what's confusing.
Oh yeah, no, the 4th one, you all had consensus of no.
No, yeah. So even the driveway would not be recommended for an exception under those findings.
Correct. On the first bullet point, I think there was at least 3 of the 5 of you on both the driveway and the open space felt the finding could be met.
Right.
On the second bullet point, 3 of
Yeah,
5 of
Dave-
each of you
Dave,
agreed.
you went through this, yeah.
Okay.
So there is no consensus on that. And again, the recommendation, I think if you are going with a motion for recommending denial, the project will be moving forward. So again, I'm going to reiterate, the more direct guidance and information that you can provide with your final recommendation would be, I think, super valuable.
All right. Well, first we need a board motion to either recommend approval or denial. And then either way, if it's an approval or denial, we would want to, while we're discussing it, perhaps add some conditions that reflect our concerns, so that the planning commission understands, and then they can make the final decision, right? So getting back to the original,
Well,
you want to make a motion.
And just to be clear, this is a recommendation to Planning Commission. Planning Commission will also be making a recommendation to Council. So it is going to be City Council who will ultimately make the decision.
I'd like to explain why I think the driveway is okay. Is this the right time to do that?
No,
No?
no, we need a motion
Okay,
either approve this or to recommend approval to the planning commission, or to recommend denial to the planning commission. And when we make the motion and get a second on either one, that's when I think I'll ask for discussion, and then we can all chime in as to if we want to amend the motion with conditions of how they could do the driveway, or how they could do the natural state, or whatever. So someone needs to make a motion. Would anyone like to try it?
Get your pictures up there.
How about if I make a motion?
Okay. Oh,
It's not
all
the
right,
chair.
yes.
I'll make a motion. I would recommend denial of this project based on not being able to find, to make the findings, the 4 findings, to recommend the exceptions for natural state and the driveway. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that. Board
Good.
Member Kowalski.
Good. Now we can open it up for discussion to see if we can get some kind of consensus. Remember, you don't have to vote for this motion, even though it's been moved and seconded. If 3 out of 5 vote against this motion, we'll have another motion. But does anybody want to discuss this? I would start with saying, one of the conditions, like I said, was I would like to see a better amount of natural state proportional to the size. If these are legal buildable lots of around 5,000 square feet, and they should be 7,500 square feet, let's see if they can do 2/3, 60 to 65%, say, of the required natural state. If they can provide that, then I think I could find make the findings for that exception.
I actually totally agree with that. That, if they're 2/3 a normal size lot, then whatever their natural state is should be proportional. I agree with that. As far as the driveway, if the fire department's fine with it, I mean, it's kind of a pick your poison a little bit. Do you have higher retaining walls, or do you have more slope on your driveway? And as far as I'm concerned, I'd let that be a designer's choice.
And I think for the driveway, the slope is too high, but we can't stop them from getting to these buildable lots. So it seems to me we have to let the driveway go through.
I'll speak up in support of the driveway also. I'd much rather see lower retaining walls. And if the fire department is the most important group that's going to use it, if they approve it, then it's fine with me.
Okay. Sarah, do you have any input?
I agree with that.
Any other discussion on that?
So it only sounds to me, Larry, the motion should be that we could approve this project and make the findings if they could find the 3/4 or 2/3, I think you said, amount of open space.
Right. I think that, yeah. That's, you tell me, Leslie, I mean, which is the better way to recommend approval if they can provide 2/3, or recommend denial because they can't?
Well, let's give them the option.
I think the former is a more productive and constructive way to move forward.
Deny it?
Because no, I think you should recommend approval if.
I do too.
The same with the other conditions that I think that you haven't addressed, and I don't know if you're doing a second motion or if you want to add those into this.
Well, no, because the motion was to deny it. That was, technically, that's the motion to deny it and to second it. And unless, I mean, it's better to
let's vote on that.
Pardon me?
Let's vote on that motion.
Yeah, let's vote on it. Just if you don't like that motion and you want to recommend approval with other conditions, and then we should vote that one down and then have a new motion from one of you other people.
All right. Well, I think I made it.
All right.
We'll see.
All right, so let's make a vote. Let's make a vote.
No.
So the motion is for denial. We don't have a second actually for that
We
one.
do.
No, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Eric seconded it.
Who is-
We wouldn't be discussing this if we didn't have a second.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who did? Blaney?
Sharon,
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry about that. I did
yeah,
not
you
hear that.
can't discuss a motion that is not seconded.
Okay.
Right. Okay, I missed that. Thank you. All right. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
This is on a motion to deny. Board Member Blaney,
No.
Board Member Kent,
No.
Board Member Kowalski,
No.
Vice Chair Reggie,
No.
and Chair Paul.
Yes. Well, I made the motion. I still.
Oh, all right. I'll give you that.
Sure. I mean, I'm not convinced by your thing, but go ahead. Let's have someone make another motion for, I guess, for either approval or a
Okay,
different.
so let me try and make a motion. I move that we approve this project with the stipulation that they can meet the, I guess we'll have to get an actual number, but 63 or 65% of the natural state.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Now let's open that up to discussion. Does anyone want to discuss it any further? Well, let's say, first of all, what you're saying is the driveway can stay the way it is,
Yes,
but you would like the condition, you're recommending approval, the driveway as is, but the natural state requirement has to be increased to something between 60 and 65%, or do you want to put a number on it?
well, I think we ought to put a number on it, but if it's 2/3 of 7,500, whatever that ends up being. Or no, 2/3 of 5,000.
Let's do, just say it proportional to the lot.
Requirement.
Yeah,
The required natural state, I think, was in one case 3,900 or something like that. 3,900 square feet, wasn't it? Leslie, do you have that figure?
Yeah, let me roll through this. Natural state on one lot was 3126, and they were proposing 1733 on the other lot.
so I think if we put it in
3759. And
proportion to the lot size, so if the lot is so much smaller percentage than what it needs to be, the open space should be the same.
That's a good way to put it. Just say basically the existing lot size divided by the 7,500 square foot requirement should be the same percentage as the requirement, the provided natural state versus the required natural state.
Yeah.
Is that clear? Is that clear?
yes,
Everybody?
that was key. Yes.
Everybody understand? Any other conditions that you want to put on it or any other discussion?
Well, we did have the other conditions of relooking at the magnolias and the house colors.
Good point. Good.
And the ironwood.
We should, yes.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
That should be part of the motion too.
Yes.
So that there would be the darker colors for the block wall, the retaining walls and the siding. And then the different tree species that would be faster growing. And more native,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Any other thing? Okay, Leslie, you want to take a roll call?
I do. Board Member Blaney,
Yes.
Board Member Kent,
Yes.
Board Member Kowalski,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reggie,
Yes.
and Chair Paul.
Yes,
Hey.
that's actually unanimous. How about that? This was a very tough one.
Is it still Wednesday?
What?
Is it still Wednesday?
For another 10 minutes, yes.
You,
Board members, thank you very much. I know this was difficult. I know that staff and the applicant appreciate your efforts on this, and we understand your recommendation, and we will discuss with the applicant to see whether they can comply with your requirements, and if not, we will bring it forward to the commission.
right, exactly. And we thank staff, and we also thank the applicant for doing a yeoman's job of trying to deal with a very complicated project, and we applaud all their efforts, and we hope that they can do the rest. I mean, we're like down at the 5-yard line, they gotta put it over the goal, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so that was our agenda item. And now we'll move on to the section action item, which is the annual meeting of 2022. And that's for election of officers for the design review board meetings, the distribution and review of design review board rules of order, and the distribution and review of the scheduled meetings for 2022. Leslie, want to take us through that?
Yes. Yes. So these are the items that I'll be going, and I'm actually going to, as less of a staff report, then go through them one by one. So the first is election of officers for 2022. So the officers have been following a rotation schedule, generally set based on a member's length of service. So as we know, Chair Paul is the current chair, with Vice Chair Reggie serving for 2021. So if you were to continue with the rotation based on tenure, rotating in the new members, the chair for 2022 would be current Vice Chair Reggie, and the vice chair would be board member Kowalski. So that would be if you were to move forward with the procedures as usual. And that said, I'm going to turn it to you all for discussion, whether you want to continue with that, whether you have any other ideas or votes for nominations for chair and vice chair. And if you want a discussion, and then we will take a vote first on chair and then a second vote based on vice chair.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on, anybody want to revolt? Or do you want to just go with the standard procedure?
What does the vice chair do? What are the responsibilities?
A lot of work, Sharon.
Yeah,
A lot, ask Sarah.
you're just there in case the chair isn't there that day.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
You also got to vote second to last.
Yeah, that's another one. Okay, everybody good with that rotation?
Keep the rotation.
Yeah, all right. Let's call for a roll call vote then.
Okay, so that was a motion by Kent, the second by,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was no second. There was no,
I'll second it.
good, Don, thank you.
okay. Okay, so we are just voting in one fell swoop for Chair Reggie and Vice Chair Kowalski, correct?
Yes, I think that's
Keeping
best.
the rotation. Okay. Excellent. So with that, Blaney, about board
Yes.
member Blaney. Board member Kent,
Aye.
board member Kowalski,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reggie,
Yes.
and Chair Paul.
Yay.
Excellent.
So that is
Next,
unanimous.
yay.
Sarah will be chair and Sharon will be vice chair for the
Yeah.
entire year. Now the rules of
Okay,
order.
so yes. Next are the rules of order. They were last amended in 2018, and the board made one procedural change: the timing of the board's questions. Although I wrote that staff has no recommendations for change after I published this, I realized I do have one recommendation, and so apologies. And it is, at least when I printed it out, if you have Exhibit 1, it is on page, oh goodness, page 4, under Section 7, Conduct of Meetings, B, procedure of presentation.
Well, I'm
and
sorry, what page?
It's on page 4, and it's B5, and it's related to comments from the public. And it says comments from the public, where appropriate, limited to 3 minutes per speaker, extended at chair's discretion. So my recommendation is extended or limited at chair's discretion to keep it in line with City Council, which allows 2 minutes of speak. So, you know, it does allow for, DRB doesn't often get like quite the number of people, but if you do have a very contentious item with 20 or 30 people wishing to speak, it would allow, you know, explicitly allow the chair to limit speaking time to 2 minutes. So that is my one recommendation for your consideration.
That sounds reasonable.
I might, maybe a better way to say it would be, which may be modified at chair's discretion.
I think that sounds beautiful, actually.
I mean, I'm thinking, for example, sometimes we get someone that might want to speak for a homeowners association or a group of people that would rather consolidate, instead of having 10 people get up and spend 3 minutes each saying the same thing, we could have one person represent them and get up for 10 minutes. And it would save us some time, and it would save people repeating themselves if they so choose to. I'm not suggesting that we, you know, offer that, but it just, that would give them another option, that's all. And it'd be a little less, I don't know, saying reduced or extended sounds a little funny to me, but.
Right, I agree. So that is staff's recommendation as with a friendly amendment by Chair Paul.
I move we accept the recommendation.
I second.
You want to discuss
All
it?
right.
Is there any discussion? I have something. I don't know if it goes in here, and maybe it's not a formal thing, but one of the things that concerned me today was getting all this paper emailed to us on all the public comment. I think we had over 100 pages sent to us at about 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Impossible to go through all that. Luckily, most of it had been sent to us previous, so I had read it all, but there were some new emails, and I would appreciate if there's some way that staff could communicate to the public that if these things should be sent to us at least on the Friday before the meeting. So we have a few days,
Yes.
the weekend at least, to go through some of these things. Because I mean, we're all busy. I think we're all working on, even if we're working at home, we're not all retired yet, are we? But maybe Jeff is, I guess. So you probably read every single word, but coming at 4 o'clock and having a meeting at 7 o'clock is asking a lot. I prefer if you could send this stuff on Friday, and make the public aware that if they send an email on Monday, we're not going to get it.
Yeah.
It's not even easy, even when you're just lying on the couch eating bonbons all day.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So A few things about that, Chair Paul. I know we've discussed it before, not about this event. So there were some drop balls in this event with some of the communication not being provided in time by the project planner, which was stressing me out. And then unfortunately, the supplemental by accident first went to the Planning Commission.
Oh.
So there was just a few snafus. But I do try. So I have talked to the city clerk about it because I know it's not super helpful to get so much correspondence late. So there is the balance of making it available to you all, you know, because I wanted to cut it off. Like if you don't turn it in by X time, and you know the city clerk wasn't comfortable with that. So there needs to be clear communication, like please be aware if it doesn't make it in by the packet. It's like the chances are, you know, it's not in person. I don't know how you all did it, but where I used to work, you know, people would come with copies of things at the meeting, and it's like,
Yeah.
you can do that, but no one will have the opportunity to read it. So yeah, I do hear you, and I'm gonna this year try to make it clear, like this will occur, but get it in earlier. So,
Well,
but
and
part of it, I
done that.
just,
When
yeah.
when we've met at the city council chambers, people come in routinely right before the meeting and they present us with, you know, letters, and usually we can't read them, and so it's not fair to them if they think that we're going to actually read them. But then oftentimes what they do is they present us with a letter and they use their public time to basically read the letter to us. So I'd say rather just do that.
Yep. No,
Same thing
I
with these
hear you.
emails. If they're going to email on Monday and expect us to do something on Tuesday, it'd be better just to come and do this thing. I think there's a whole thing that has to be rethought about because of Zoom meetings. Like one of the things, I've got a couple of screens open and we're watching the presentation that you or Dave is doing, sharing your screen, and I'm trying to read stuff on my screen, and it's very difficult. Whereas, you know, in person, we've got the board up, or the monitor, the screen up here, the projection, and then we've got our drawings and our papers here, so it's a lot easier to do it in person. So I'd also make a strong thing for us to get back to meeting in person. I think it's going to go
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes.
Why was this meeting on Wednesday?
Because of Martin Luther King,
Oh, yes.
everything gets
Yeah.
pushed off
So
for
we
a
can get
holiday.
that with the schedule.
We're gonna go back to Tuesday.
Oh, we will. It's just
It
that
is on-
city council was on Tuesday because everybody was closed on Monday. Not everybody, just government workers.
We have some perks. Yes.
Whenever we have a holiday,
Okay.
Sharon, it gets pushed
Okay.
back. Like, I don't know, when's the next holiday? President's
So the
Day?
next holiday
Valentine's Day.
it's February 21st. Not sure what the holiday is. President's Day.
Probably President's Day.
So that is, let me just take a vote on this,
Yeah.
if I may. We do a roll call and then we can turn to the schedule. This will be quick.
Rules of
Board Member
order.
Blaney. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Board Member Kent.
Yes.
Board Member Kowalski.
Yes.
Vice Chair Reggie.
Yes.
And Chair Paul.
Yes.
Okay, so the last thing is I did prepare, which was exhibit 2, should be exhibit 3, I think, the design review board meetings for 2022. And I don't know if you all got it. So it is in the packet, and you will see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings this year that are scheduled for Wednesday. When I put this together, so one of my questions, not just for now, but if you see any mistakes in it, I did my best trying to like see the holidays and put it. I got very confused. DRBs are the first and third Tuesday of each month. And this is the part had to do it over. The first and third Tuesday of each month for those weeks that start on a Monday. So essentially, if the month starts on a Tuesday, and there are 3 months in 2022 that start on a Tuesday, DRB is actually going to be the second and fourth for the layperson. So what you need to know is that DRB follows is the day after council. So when council falls on a Tuesday because of a holiday, DRB will fall on a Wednesday. So there are 4. So when you take a look at this, the other thing is if I have the date wrong or a day wrong, let me know. If there's you know, a significant religious holiday or something else, please let me know, because I don't want to schedule something that will be, you know, an inconvenience to a majority of folks, or even a portion of folks within the community, like a large portion. So that, no vote required, but just a request to review. And that is item number, what was that on the agenda?
2.
3.
Oh.
Good. Is there any discussion on that one? We don't need a vote, but I don't think I will be here on February 23rd.
Okay.
But I'm not chair anymore, so I don't have to be.
Yeah. So if you can just send an email before the date, so I will remember. And
well, you always,
and
somebody
Blaney.
always sends asking. I think Brenna always asks if we're going to be here.
I know, she is good.
Yeah.
Oh, and I guess I should let you know that we do have a full-time admin staff. Her name is Danielle Jones. She started in November, mid-November. So she will be transferring the duties that the city clerk's office has taken over for us in our short staffing are going to be transferring back to our department. And so Danielle Jones will be the new Brenna. And I know board member Ken, you've met Danielle. Oh, she will be very happy to not have to do double duty. Like, she's been working like crazy to do city council stuff and planning commission and DRB stuff. So it's been amazing. So just to let you know, when you start getting emails from Danielle, it's not spam. So yeah, so that's super exciting. Just apropos of not much, but going in person, out of our staff, of our planning division staff of 5, well, 1 is on maternity leave and 3 of us are in isolation at home due to COVID exposure. So there is only, we are very short staffed in person right now as well. So I'm not sure how quickly, what's going on, but we're going to have to close, we just don't have, we have folks able to work, but not to come into work. So it's been tough. So yes,
You actually,
but we'll keep you posted.
Staff has gotten hit by COVID, or just
no, family members either exposed to or testing positive to. So far, not staff. I mean, not good for anybody, but
yeah. How about the board? Everybody good, staying safe and healthy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in the
Good for you
corporate
all.
world, most of the return to studios have been pushed out to April.
Yeah.
So April 4th is now the new.
Well, they're saying like maybe a third of people are never going to go back into the office. People like working at home, and it just makes it easier on some people. It's going to be a whole different way of working.
Yeah.
Okay, is that all for the meeting dates? Then can we have the
that's all.
director's report?
Yeah, I actually don't have a director's report. Yeah, I will. I don't know what we followed last time, but in December, we did go to the city council with information on SB 9, which is the law that allows single family zoned projects to build a duplex by right with certain requirements, like you can't be, in a hazardous site or a historic resource. So there's a list of certain things, and allows for the lot to have an urban lot split and to have the second lot also have a duplex. So we went forward with kind of having council authorize staff to put through guidelines, which are, there are a few things that are under the discretion of municipalities. So for our guidelines moving forward until we, and to directed staff to actually create an ordinance. So as we move forward with our current guidelines, we have just taken the most conservative means forward at this point. And then as we move forward with the ordinance, then we can get the public input and the council input to see, like, do we want this or do we not? And I think the one that has the most I think impact, I mean, some of them I think are kind of non-brainers, like require not frontage, but access to the right of way. Like, yeah, I think that's important. But the one is, there is the opportunity for municipalities to not allow ADUs on lots that take advantage of the lot split under SB 9. And so if you're wishing to do an urban duplex with lot split now, we would not allow ADUs on the lot split lots. But again, that is just to take it most conservatively until we get input from the public, from folks. So yeah, that's moving forward, pretty exciting. The other thing I think I must have mentioned, we are moving forward with objective standards. We have gotten a little bit of a reprieve on our funding. And these would be objective design standards, so that projects that are ministerial now, such as SB 35 projects or SB 9 projects, that we'd have a more cohesive, since we can't apply objective design standards that have been adopted. So if we have public input on that, and especially from the design review, then projects that come through, we can ensure that certain things are met with the design. So that was on a very fast track schedule because it received funding through a funding source that was going to don't get me, I won't quote it right. So that was going to expire in July. However, that has been extended a few months. So when I say it's given us reprieve, we feel that this is super important to get done, but we are just struggling with staff and meeting our, so we have a few more months to do it and take a deep breath, but that is expected to come to you this year. So that will be, you guys will be, in my opinion, key players to provide. So if you have ideas of what you want, what you think, what should be applied, yeah, start thinking about that. And that is what I have. Oh, one other thing, not quite the director's report. Just really wanted to thank you, Chair Paul, for your year of service. You've been awesome to work with. I know I've only been here for half of the year, but thank you. It's been great. And
Sure.
I look forward to the new reign of Chair Reggie and Vice Chair Kowalski.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for all your service too. It's been great. Sarah, you'll find that she puts together a whole script, so you don't have
Awesome.
Well, that is good.
Yeah, I do need to refresh the rules of order. You seem to have them down. So it's the script. I knew there was a secret there. That's great.
Leslie, is there a draft of those are they amendments or that you were talking about the, if this lot splits, then no ADU? Is there a draft or something we can see?
What we have, no, that is being worked on by our newest planner, he started December 1st, and the first day, the planning director is like, here, we need you to take this to council. So he's working on actually writing up the guidelines, but he did, what I would recommend is looking at the council report that went December, was it the 20th? The last meeting.
Oh, it's in those.
Kind of goes through.
Okay.
And that kind of has the outline of what we're doing, you know, what is kind of the parts that we do have say in, and how do we want to move forward, so.
Okay, I'll look. Thanks.
Leslie, do we have any major projects coming up? I know we've had some meetings canceled. So.
Yeah.
So look.
Not major yet. No, we are getting some submitted, which is exciting, though I think one is going to be an SB 35, which is a ministerial project, so that won't have any type of review by any of us, just by any of the boards or commissions. It will just be a review that it meets all the, you know, the development standards. We have a density bonus project submitted in the downtown, so that should be coming to you, but it's just submitted, so it still needs some massaging. So no, we're on this. You know, we're moving forward with some big projects, including Northgate Mall, Town Square, but
that's being revised, though, I guess.
It is being revised. They're going to submit soon, and that will be coming to you. And we want it to come to you all like sooner rather than later to provide public input to the revisions and not have it be late. So that we're hoping late spring, early summer for that. And then the other, just a follow up, the Los Gamos Apartments project that you all reviewed is scheduled to go to City Council on February, the day before your meeting, and your schedule, February 7th. So if you're interested in how that goes, that should have hopefully a decision on February 7th. So.
I have a question about projects like Northgate or other large development projects that had not done their traffic studies. So they can't possibly be doing traffic studies now during COVID and saying that those are going to be the conditions that they're adhering to. So I think there has to be some. I'm just curious what the thinking is on that, because that is completely inaccurate in long-term thinking.
So because we've moved to a VMT model, and I am only talking not as somebody fluent in this, but I have been in some meetings. I guess the modeling, I didn't quite understand this, but for projects as large as Northgate, or if you're doing a specific plan, you do a specific modeling that was kind of, I don't know, adopted by ABAG, and Marin Transportation, what is it, TAM is using it. So it's modeling of like the population and kind of what do you call it, kind of the makeup of the population. So it's not really traffic counts anymore. So the COVID doesn't apply. Like if someone's asking like, well, what about like actual traffic? So from a CEQA point of view, it isn't as much a disruption in terms of if you are looking at LOS, which the city does still do, not so much LOS, but traffic in terms of traffic impacts. I think they're just moving forward the best they can. Because you know, if we all thought 2 years ago we'd still be in this state today. So yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I got a couple other questions. I noticed that the I don't know what it's called, but that senior housing, the assisted living on Redwood is almost complete. I don't know if it's Redwood. It's the little frontage road on the west side of the freeway. There used to be the Bruner's Furniture. You know which one I'm talking about?
I do not, but so this I think is less a question than an announcement. So are you speaking about the Whistle? That's not the Whistle Stop one, is it?
No.
I'm not sure which one it is.
In Terra Linda.
Over by the A&W.
Yeah, right, by the A&W La Toscana restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's almost done. They got the lights on, but it's not quite ready for prime time yet. I was just
So I
wondering
don't know
when
that,
it's going to
yeah.
be, when it's gonna be opened, and are we gonna be invited to the ribbon cutting? And the same thing is about the Marriott Hotel downtown. When is that gonna be finished? Do you know
Oh.
that?
They're, no, they are still working hard. They
look like they're pretty close though.
they got set back quite a bit from that that atmospheric river event that we had. Like, when was that, in October? They got wrenched, so had to run like drying. So yeah, I'm the wrong person for that, but I can look into that and ask the building inspector, the chief building official, about those. Yeah, I just get to see it when I come in and be like, oh, look at it now. So it's kind of
We
exciting.
want to be at the grand opening of that one, because that's a major,
Yeah, right?
that's a major improvement to
Yeah.
downtown, so. Like to see that. And then the last question is, what's going on with the bowling alley project?
Oh, goodness. So they just resubmitted, actually, yeah, this week. So I think I've offered to Crystal Rizzi, the project planner, like maybe we should sit down together and go through, because I think they have some. It's a challenging site, so I thought, the comments that they received from you all were great, and it would be nice. I'm always hopeful when an applicant, it's kind of like, oh no, and it's so nice when they're really responsive, so we'll see. So I don't know, I haven't seen it, but I do know that they submitted, I think it was yesterday, so still moving forward.
Good. All right. Any other communications from the board? Everybody want to go home? I guess you're all home now, right? So you don't have to go home. You can stay up late.
I want to go to bed.
I want to go
Past
to
my
home.
bedtime.
All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank
Night,
you.
everybody.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Okay.